For the first time in my adult life, I've paid some attention to female basketball, and solely because of one person, Caitlin Clarke, right? She's heterosexual, right? She's some white girl out of middle America, and she's likable, she's attractive, and she does cool things with the basketball, and she's not some thug. And why is the WNBA a completely losing organization, uninterested in dialing back the thuggishness that currently dominates the league? So Steve Saylor writes, the Caitlin conundrum, when thuggishness damaged the appeal of the National Basketball Association around the turn of the century. So think about all the problems in the National Basketball Association with criminal behavior, with impregnating women that the basketball players aren't married to, right? Just the overall bad behavior of so many National Basketball League players. Remember how bad it was in the 70s? So I first started paying attention to the National Basketball Association in the 1970s, and it was the least appealing, and it had the least hold of the American public of the three major sports. All right, you'd even have NBA Finals games that would not even be televised live because the league was dominated by thugs who did a lot of drugs and behaved like thugs, and America was not into that. So when the thuggishness damaged the appeal of the National Basketball Association, the executive leadership took steps to rein it in. So why haven't NBA executives intervened in their women's NBA vanity project to protect their most valuable asset, rookie Caitlin Clarke, from the racist, heterophobic violence at the hands of their black, lesbian-dominated players who have managed for 3 decades to keep the WNBA unpopular and unprofitable? So how often do you hear about heterophobia? Right? You never hear about heterophobia, but there's just as much proportionally heterophobia here about heterophobia as there is homophobia, right? Just as that there are plenty of Jews who don't particularly care for non-Jews, at about the same proportion as there are non-Jews who don't particularly care for Jews. But you never hear about anti-Gentilism, right? That's the hate that dare not speak its name. And you never hear about heterophobia, but it's present, right? If you got a strong homosexual identity, you're highly likely to have some fear and some negative feelings about heterosexuality and heterosexuals. Just like if you have a strong heterosexual identity, it may absolutely turn your stomach to see in a movie or a TV show, like suddenly 2 guys start kissing and embracing. I mean, for me, it just turns my stomach. I have just a visceral repulsion, not because I think the people engaged in this behavior are bad people. It's just distasteful for me because I have a heterosexual orientation and I've only ever had heterosexual sex. And the idea of sex between men is completely repulsive. That's just a function of my heterosexual identity. So too, I would not be surprised if for many homosexuals, the idea of heterosexual activity is repulsive, right? The stronger your in-group identity, the more likely you are to have negative feelings about out-groups. And just as there are plenty of white people who aren't that thrilled with black people, in fact, have some fear of black people and have some negative feelings about black people, proportionally, there are just as many black people who have those same negative feelings, right, about white people. So group identity doesn't just belong to Christians. It doesn't just belong to white people. All right, group identity is something that all groups have, and the higher your in-group identity, all right, the more likely you are to have resentment and fear and concern and distaste and disgust with out-groups. But it only ever gets described in one way, right? How often have you heard about rookie Caitlin Clarke, right, suffering from racist, heterophobic violence at the hands of black, lesbian-dominated players, right? We're supposed to think that that sexual phobia only runs in one direction. It's just something that uniquely heterosexual people have, and the good people of the homosexual community just never experience this. But it's nonsense. All right. The executives of the WNBA and the NBA have considerable power to change their rules and how the referees interpret them to improve their product.